Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to speak on one of these resolutions, the resolution number 375 about the Columbus, Ohio Bicentennial. Today marks the 200th anniversary of the founding of the city of Columbus, the largest city, one of the great cities of America, the capital of the great state of Ohio. I've lived in different neighborhoods in Columbus over the last 30 years, from German Village to Berwick to the Hilltop. My grandson lives in Clintonville. My daughter lives grandson and his parents, he's only 3, live in Clintonville, a great neighborhood in sort of the north side of Columbus. Our daughter lives in the short north, one of the most exciting places of any city in the Midwest. For 200 years, Columbus has been a hub of economic and cultural activity for the state. We talk often in Columbus about the brain gain, how Columbus is one of the fastest growing cities in the Midwest and east of the Mississippi. Columbus started in its early days as a trading post along the Scioto River, continued as steamboats and railroads connected more people with new opportunities and new commerce. I should add that the presiding officer, if I'm allowed to say this, once lived in the great city of Columbus. I think I'm allowed to say that. He now is the very able junior senator from Colorado. During the Civil War, Columbus became an important location for the Union Army and something we're particularly proud of for the Underground Railroad. Through the turmoil of that era, President Lincoln signed the Morrill Act, which created the Ohio Agricultural and Mechanical College, which led to the creation of the Agricultural Mechanical College in 1870. In 1878, it was renamed Ohio State University. Today, OSU is one of the nation's premier public universities, and there are many other institutions of higher learning in Columbus. Capital University, established much earlier than that in 1830. The Columbus College of Art and Design, established in 1879. The Pontifical College Josephinium, established in 1888. Franklin University, established in 1902. The Mount Carmel College of Nursing in 1903. Ohio Dominican University, established in 1911, the year my father was born. And the Columbus State Community College, established, one of Ohio's part of the great group of community colleges that were visiting the Capitol today. There are many people from those colleges, established in 1963. Columbus is home to some of the nation's earliest schools for Americans living with disabilities. The Ohio School for the Deaf was established in 1829. Many graduates of that school have gone on to Gallaudet University, located in Washington, founded during the Civil War by Abraham Lincoln, the most outstanding school of its kind in the country. The Ohio School for the Blind was established in 1837. 2011, Columbus's library system was named the best in the United States as the recipient of the National Medal for Museum and Library Service. Columbus prospered in the post-Civil War era through new banks, expanded railroad networks, extended streetcar service in the city's first waterworks system. Manufacturers, from horse and buggy manufacturers to steel and brewers, made Columbus an important location for organized labor. The American Federation of Labor, which later merged with the Congress of Industrial Organizations into the AFL-C, what we know today as the AFL-CIO. The American Federation of Labor was founded in Columbus 116 years ago in 1886. Today, the legacy of advanced manufacturing continues at Ohio's cutting-edge Edison Networks, the Ohio Manufacturing Association, and Battelle. The spirit of the labor movement continues as workers of Columbus local unions represent all types of industries and professions. Attracted by world-class workforces and cultural outlets, leading retail corporations, healthcare and insurance companies, and financial institutions, such as the Limited, Nationwide, Grange, Cardinal Health, and Huntington, all call Columbus their home. It's a leader in cutting-edge medical research and hospital systems. We see it at the Ohio State Medical Center, the Arthur James Cancer Hospital, the Richard Soloff Research Institute, nationwide children's hospitals, among almost all ranking of the top 10 children's hospitals in America. 3 of them are in Ohio consistently: Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, in addition to other great children's hospitals in Ohio. Mount Carmel Hospital, Riverside Community, and Grant Medical Center. Columbus is a crown jewel of arts and cultures in the Midwest. The majestic Southern Theater, which was one of Southern Theater and Hotel, have attracted world-class performances for more than 100 years. The Southern Hotel was one of President Theodore Roosevelt's favorite stops as he traveled through the Midwest. The short north is the epicenter of the burgeoning art scene, homes to galleries and parks and restaurants like Betty's, the Happy Greek, Ginny's Ice Cream, and the North Market that attract an incredible number of young people with energy and commitment to that city. It hosts some of the Midwest's largest concert fairs and festivals, ranging from ComFest to the Pride Festival. Columbus is also home to the Midwest's largest 4th of July festival and the very famous Ohio State Fair. Mayor Coleman and the Columbus Partnership, which is the business but much more than just businesses organization, are doing a tremendous job promoting economic development from the South Campus Gateway to the short north to the Scioto Riverfront into German Village. And like Ohioans across the state, the people have long served those who serve us, our veterans. One of the first Veterans of Foreign War chapters in the country was founded in Columbus in 1899. Aside from Columbus is also known for great sports teams, obviously Ohio State, Columbus Clippers, Columbus Crew, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. This year, the city of Columbus will commence a year-long bicentennial celebration with the theme honoring the past, celebrating the present, and envisioning the future. In doing so, it will celebrate the economic, cultural, educational, and artistic contributions of the people of Columbus to our great state and our great nation. So on behalf of the United States Senate, with unanimous consent, I wish all the citizens of Columbus a happy 200th anniversary. I thank the presiding officer.